We'll quickly get thermometers in these. I've been putting thermometers in the food that I put in the freeze dryer for quite a while. I want to go over a little bit about why and how. First, thermometers in your food may have no value at all to you. And I'm not trying to convert anybody to my way of doing things. I'm just trying to show what I'm doing and give data as to why when I can. Putting thermometers in your food that's going in the freeze dryer is absolutely not required. And I absolutely love using them. I consider them to be probably the second most important tool after the scale for freeze drying. I use it for checking the temperature of the food while the freeze dryer is still running, and I use the scale to check for moisture. It actually only takes a few seconds when I'm not trying to show it on video. And I am trying to switch, and that's what this video is about, to pre-freezing stainless steel rods in the food that then I can remove and replace with the thermometers so that I don't have to drill anymore. This was a suggestion by Ron K., one of the viewers. I plan to do another video later about moisture meters, the different kinds, and why I would never trust any of the ones I've ever heard of. I actually started working on this video about 6 months ago when Ron K. had suggested using stainless steel rods pre-frozen in the food instead of drilling. It sounded like a good idea, and I got some stainless steel rods and started testing, but I'm really slow at testing. So now it's 6 months later and I'm finally beginning to edit the video pieces. So some of these pieces are already 6 months old, some of them are from yesterday. While I was in the middle of editing this, I got a comment from another viewer that said that the tray thermometers are pretty much useless as they will never reach the heater temperature before all the frozen water has sublimated to vapor. That process takes place at sub-freezing temperatures. Well, I never suggested anything different than that, and I don't expect the thermometers to reach the temperatures before all the frozen water has sublimated to a vapor. I expect them to tell me that there is still a cold area in the food, and therefore the process cannot be complete yet, even though the freeze dryer firmware is telling me it is. And another part of his comment was the groundbreaking revelation that, quote, fats in the chicken do not freeze dry, as fats and oils are not water. Well, of course fats and oil do not freeze dry. I never said they would. You'll find plenty of fat in commercially made freeze-dried foods. It's surprising how much is in it. I don't know why people are constantly getting so caught up with tiny bits of fat in their foods. Of course, we might want to limit it, but I also don't get crazy about a small amount in the foods. The bottom line is that for me, thermometers in the food can be one of my best tools. It does, in fact, give me extremely useful information at 2 periods during the process. First, if the machine thinks it's almost done and it's going to finish, but a thermometer still shows a very low temperature, it will not be done yet, and I can give it more time without having to stop the freeze-drying process to check it. It's a very common event. The machine can't know if the process is actually complete because of a variety of reasons. On my machine, I have it set for an extra 12 hours of final dry time. If I hadn't added the extra dry time, the machine would have said it was dry over 5 or 6 hours ago. The food on the tray is still about -15. You can see it says it has 5.5 hours left and that it's already 132 degrees. Well, that's where the temperature probe is. That's not in the food. I know from experience that it's not dry, that it probably won't be dry in 5.5 hours either. But because I have the thermometers in the food, I can simply add more time now, because this batch would be getting done in the wee hours of the morning. So I can just add more time now so that it has more time till tomorrow. Second, if the machine has already finished when I'm not there, which happens a lot, I can check the temperature of the food before opening the door to make sure it's warm enough and it won't end up with condensation on it when I open the door. If it's too cold, I can rewarm it before that happens. I want my food to have been up to 120 degrees, if that's what I've got it set for a while before I take it out, even for the first check. I know that the entire freeze drying process could happen at temperatures much lower than this, but not in this machine in this time frame. It's going to take a much longer time. So my pack of stainless steel rods arrived a while back, might be a couple of weeks already. My plan with these is to use these for helping put the thermometers into the food. And then I can put that in the food before it's frozen in the 7x7 pans. And then I'll be able to just pull this out and put the thermometer in instead of drilling it. So I'm going to give that a try, see what it does. So far I had only made 2 of these. Anyway, they came out quite nice. I learned how to make them better. And then these are just some little plastic sheets, so I could lay this on top of the food, put the rod into the food, and this would keep this up on top. Then I'd be able to depan it afterwards, give this a wiggle, and pull it out. Do have to remember to oil this up before I do that. Doing another batch of macaroni and cheese. I've got a piece of stainless steel rod in there that's about the same diameter as the thermometer. So testing that to see if I can just pull that out. Then I added a piece of plastic under it so that this end doesn't sink, and we'll see what happens. I was going to spray the rod with non-stick cooking spray, and I forgot. So now I don't know if it's stuck in there. Well, let's see what happens. Okay, that's pretty stuck. Okay. Now I can get a thermometer and just stick it in there. So that looks like that might be better than drilling. I'll have to double check more of them. If I remember to spray that with cooking spray, it's going to pop out better. And then I can slide the thermometer in. So I definitely like that. That works very well. These should be 1-pound blocks of rice. Now, if you'll notice, this has a little piece of parchment in there. That is where the stainless steel rod was. So I put this, I don't even know if you can see that, put this little piece of plastic on the rice before it's frozen and put this stainless steel rod in. It was in there like that. And I'd remembered to spray this with non-stick cooking spray. So anyway, then after it was frozen, I was able to take that out of there. But then I realized I was going to lose that hole. I wouldn't be able to find it again. So I rolled up a little piece of parchment and just put it in there so I'd be able to find it again. And then, oh, I want that plastic. I'd be able to just slip in the thermometer. It's ready to go. It's the right angle. I don't have to drill it. So that seems like that's going to work out nicely. This is another one of the ones that I put the little rod in for a test. And the thermometer in there. Now those are ready for the freeze dryer. Going to try the stainless steel rod piece again. So going to just kind of wiggle that into there. Lay it on the piece of plastic. Do the same thing on another one. Gotta lay that down there first, I think. And that'll put it into the block of food. Okay, and kind of jiggle it in there. So I have 9 more of these. I'm going to go ahead and make all of these into more of those. So then I'll have 20 of these, and I'll be able to put a lot of them in, a lot of pans, and maybe I won't have to drill anymore. I wouldn't mind not drilling and still have thermometers. You don't need thermometers at all. You can do the freeze drying without any thermometers. I'm going to make up the rest of these. So I'm just going to cut them in half, and you could use anything to cut them, whatever you've got for cutting metal. I just have some bolt cutters, which seems to work out pretty well. And I'll cut them all in half, and then we'll do some grinding on them. Next, a bit of grinding and sanding, and then bending. Got to have them all face the same way though. Going to just grind the cut end to make it completely rounded and smooth, and on the other end just enough to get rid of a sharp edge that was on it when it arrived. And it's just kind of rounded. Okay, next I'll just chuck each one of them up into a drill and do a bit of sanding on the tip. So I can just make it like this. And that rounds over that tip, smooths it right out. And then I've got some very fine sandpaper. And the same thing. Do the same thing and smooths it right out. Have a real nice tip on there. And do that to each one of them. Chuck each one of them up into the drill. And just that quick. Very, very nice and smooth. And on to the next one. So get all those finished, and then we'll get to bending them. So next, I want to put a 90-degree bend on these. And the purpose of the 90-degree bend is to give me something to grab onto and give it a twist when it's frozen in the food. If you've got really good grip, you might be able to just do it with a straight rod. There's no chance I'd be able to pull this out or give it a twist in there. So I'll give it a bend, and I'll try to go 90 degrees, but even that doesn't really matter. It's just some amount of bend that will allow me to get some leverage on it and give it a twist. Now, I've got this piece of metal in there in the edge of the workbench, and my plan is to just bend it. But if I just bend it without any kind of support along here, I'm going to get a curve in this, and then that's going to be stuck in the food because it won't be able to just slide out. So I took one of the wood pieces, I don't know what these are. These are blocks from this workbench, so they go in the holes, things for clamping. So I'll slide that. I drilled a hole in it the size of the rod, and I can slide that down over it, and that will support it and not allow it to bend in this section, so it'll have to bend down there. And then my plan is to just give it a bend. Okay. And I'm not even exactly sure about the length. So the thermometer probe is about the same length as that. And since you need it up on top of the food, I think that angle is going to be pretty good with this length. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'll just drop that down the hole. Put this over it and give it a bend. Oh, that's pretty sweet. Boy, I love it when an idea actually works. And like I said, by adding that this piece of wood with the hole in it, now it's keeping this piece of the rod very straight, so I won't get it bound up in the food. I'm not getting a super sharp bend there, but I don't think that really is going to hurt anything. It's going to, this portion isn't going to be in the food anyway because it'll be up on the little plastic piece to get the angle. So I think that that's fine. And then I don't have to work at it so hard like I would with a vise or anything. Okay, well, that's good enough. Now I've got total, I'll have 20 of them now. I'll get those through the dishwasher or hand wash them with some hot soapy water. Either way, I'll get it all cleaned up and then they're ready to use. I've got my rods all cut and ground down nicely smoothed, and then I got them washed with hot soapy water. When I'm using these in the trays of food, I'm laying this on top of the food, this little plastic piece, and then setting the stainless steel rod on top of it so that it doesn't sink into the food. This just like having snowshoes, it just keeps it from sinking down if it's liquidy type food. And maybe with real liquidy foods, I'd need to let it freeze part way before I did this, because I don't know if this will actually keep it up all the way up on top or not. But I've done it with, I've used these with stew and it did fine. So we'll have to see what I need. Yeah, so I might have to let it freeze part way before I do it. And maybe some things I'll still have to drill. I don't know. My very first one I did, I used some clear pieces of, there was some clamshell food packaging that I saw. So I just grabbed that and cut a couple of pieces off. The problem is they're so clear that I almost lost them on the top of the food a couple of times, and then when I go to wash them, they're really hard to find. So I've switched over to these purple ones, and these are just lids for food storage containers, and then I'm cutting the rim off of it, and then I'm just cutting them into strip, and I can get 3 of them out of them. If you're like us, you destroy the container before the lid, or the lid might get a crack in it, so we can use them for that. These are 6 inches, so I can do 2-inch strips off of these. And I can get 3 of these out of each one of these little lids. And I just cut the rim off first with a pair of scissors. And it certainly don't have to be very neat, I just need to cut that edge off of there. I can make enough of these to go with all of the little stainless steel rods. And there might be some obvious simple method that I've overlooked because I had this stuff, so I just grabbed it. If you think of a better plan, let me know. I need something that just sets on top of the food that can support the end of this, so the whole rod doesn't sink into it, and that I can take off afterwards so it's not stuck in the food. So I don't want to put any kind of bridge or something sticking down into the food with this resting on. That's why I was trying this, because it seems to float well enough on most foods. Anyway, that's how I'm doing these rods, and of course here's a few examples of using them, or maybe there already was. Coat it with a little cooking spray, and then slide it into the food. So far, the little stainless steel rods look like a good idea. They look like they're easier than drilling. And once again, I'm not trying to convert anybody to my methods. This is my personal guideline about dry food. Number 1, never trust the freeze dryer or a spot check moisture meter to tell me if the food is dry. I do a dry check using a scale to make sure it's dry before bagging and storing. Number 2, don't overload the freeze dryer. I try to keep the medium machine to a maximum of about 8 pounds of water weight per batch. And I have done more, like 11, and it took a very long time. Number 3, make sure the food on the trays is not too thick, and that's height, not viscosity. If you do, you may have to run the batch twice. Number 4, when in doubt about dryness, add extra final dry time and then check it again. Number 5, never trust the freeze dryer or a spot check moisture meter to tell you if the food is dry. Do a dry check using a scale to make sure it's dry. If you're not going to check to make sure the food is dry, you might as well just flip a coin and hope. And number 6, never trust the freeze dryer or a spot check moisture meter to tell you if the food is dry. It can't know. Do a dry check using a scale and make sure it's all dry before bagging and storing. I've heard from too many people that thought their food was dry by feel or temperature gun or infrared camera or lumber moisture meter, only to check it again a short time later and find out that it really wasn't dry. The spot had been missed and now it's all gone bad. And finally, remember, I'm just another idiot on the internet. I could be wrong. The number 1 joke at our house is, "But I saw it on the internet." Consider looking into what commercial companies are doing. That's where I look for guidance. If they can do it, we probably can too, though we may have to make method adjustments and time adjustments. And as I said, this is my personal guideline for how I check to make sure that I have all of my food dry before I bag it. This may not work for you. You need to find a method that you feel comfortable with, that you feel comfortable that everything is dry before you bag it and store it.